And March is also Women's History Month, and in celebration of Women's History Month, a pioneer for women's rights will be speaking at the Bloomfield Township Public Library on Wednesday, March 26 at 1 p.m. It's an event hosted by the League of Women's Voters of Oakland area. The event will provide insights into women's leadership, empowerment, and an ongoing fight for gender equality. And joining us right here live on The Splash is the keynote speaker for that event, author and podcast host, Anne Doyle. Thank you for being here.
Kevin, I'm very happy to be here.
And we appreciate your time. Just first, like I said, you're an author, right? So I want to talk about your book. March is also Reading Month, so let's highlight that. Your book, Powering Up: How America's Women Achievers Became Leaders, serves as a guide for high-achieving women who aspire to leadership roles. Can you just talk about what inspired you, first and foremost, to even write this book?
Sure. Kevin, I'm a part of that generation of women who came of age, came out of the universities and moved into the workforce in the early 1970s, really at the height of the women's movement. And I've seen tremendous change in terms of opportunities for women and people of color over the last 5 decades. But what inspired me to write my book, it came out in 2011, the very first time. It's been updated 2 times, and people are telling me I need to update it again. But what inspired me to write it was the fact that for about 30 or 40 years, we saw tremendous movement in terms of women and people of color moving into jobs, economic opportunities that really had been padlocked for centuries. And so we saw tremendous progress, the first. But after a while, what happened was we started seeing the middle getting bigger and bigger, more women, let's say, specifically in doctors and lawyers and MBAs, but in middle management. But what we weren't seeing is women going anywhere they hadn't already been, and that was into cracking leadership. So I'm a former journalist, and that was the question I asked myself, is why are women stalled, and what is it going to take now for all these highly educated, professionally experienced women to move into leadership? And that's the research I did, and that's why I wrote the book.
Nice. Love the backstory behind that, and love how you just spoke on, you wrote the book in 2011, but you also made some changes. Time have changed a lot since then also. And with that being said, I want to speak on that. You spoke on it briefly as well. How have you seen women's leadership evolve over the past few decades, if you don't mind?
Well, I would say that we have seen tremendous progress in leadership in terms of, now you have more women in the United States Senate, more women in Congress. We've had 2 women who actually were chosen by a major political party to run for president of the United States. And even the tremendous growth we've seen in terms of women's sports. I love the story about the West Bloomfield Lakers, but what's happening in terms of the WNBA and all of that, that's all about leadership, because sports is a grooming place for women and men, to move into leadership roles. But I also want to say, at this moment, I feel that we are not only stalled, but I never thought I would live long enough to unfortunately see women starting to slip backwards. And I feel very strongly that this is a moment for us to be very, very conscious and courageous about the importance of continuing to raise our voices in terms of the importance of diverse leadership to make very good decisions for our country.
Very, very well said, very well spoken. And I want to kind of dig into the importance of Women's History Month. Why is it important for communities as a whole, specifically right here in Greater West Bloomfield, to celebrate and reflect on women's contributions?
Well, I think one of the reasons is because women's history has not been written. And it's very, very important for young people growing up, to see role models of people who look like them, who have achieved great things. And women have achieved great things, but those stories have not been told. And so I'm very happy that finally there is going to be a Smithsonian Women's History Museum on the Mall in Washington, D.C. That's been in the works for a very, very long time. And it's finally, I'm probably going to live long enough to see that happen. But I think the most important part of that for me is really for our next generation of young people to understand that the history we've been taught in school isn't the full story.
Mm-hmm.
And we want all of our children to know the full story.
Great point. Great point. As told by her story. I see what you did there. I caught on very easily. And with us right here, live on the Splash, author of Powering Up: How America's Women Became Leaders, and host of podcast Powering Up, Anne Doyle, just talking about speaking at the upcoming event Wednesday, March 26th at the Bloomfield Township Public Library, an event hosted by the League of Women's Voters of Oakland area. Now, I want to speak on this podcast very briefly, right? Your
Okay.
podcast, Power Up Women, explores women and power. Can you just talk about what are some of the most impactful conversations that you've had on that show?
Well, I like to describe it, Kevin, as a cross-generational conversation about leadership, gender, and power. And so one of the things I really tried to do is to make sure that I'm talking to diverse leaders, also of very different generations, because we have a lot to learn from older women to younger women to us. Boy, there's so many impactful conversations, but some that come to mind. Michigan Senator Mallory McMurrow speaking up in Lansing about the sexual harassment that was going on of other women legislators in Lansing. A woman who, a competitive sailor, ocean sailing around the world by herself. That kind of inspiration. Also, talking about the Equal Rights Amendment. The Equal Rights Amendment, we did a whole podcast about the fact that we are the really pretty much the only mature democracy in the world that does not include protection for women in our Constitution. And the ERA was introduced 104 years ago. It was introduced immediately after women won the right to vote, which was 1920.
Mm-hmm.
And we still do not have that. And so, those are the kinds of conversations that I try to have that are important in terms of history, but also inspiring leaders to, hey, get out there on the front lines and help, because my favorite expression is, well-behaved women never make history. So let's get out there and rock the boat.
There it is. There it is. Stir up a little bit of, shake things up and
Oh,
just make
yeah.
things
Oh, yeah.
interesting. Yeah, level the playing field. I like it. I like that. I like that. So we are running a little bit low on time, but ultimately I think I want to get to the main thing. You being the keynote speaker at this upcoming event, Wednesday, March 26, 1 p.m., Bloomfield Township Public Library for the League of Women's Voters in Oakland, of Oakland area. What do you hope attendees take away from your upcoming talk at this event?
Well, Kevin, my most important goal is to really inspire the attendees to be courageous, to step forward, to raise their voices, to be active citizens. And I strongly feel that we are at a defining moment in our country's history right now. And the last thing we want to do is to be quiet. And the League of Women Voters, which was founded in 1920, right after women got the right to vote, is all about helping educate and encourage and inspire all women and
Right.
all voters to be active. And that's what I hope I can do, is to encourage people to be courageous at this moment, to raise their voices, and to be active citizens who help shape the kind of country we want to live in.
And we're hoping there's going to be a great turnout. A lot of people are going to take a lot of value in your words and your speech as well. Before we let you go, if you want to tell people how they can reach out to you, where they can listen and get to your podcast and things of that nature, please, the floor is yours.
Sure, that would be fantastic. I don't mind giving people my email address. I live in Auburn Hills. I served on the city council in Auburn Hills, and my website is AnneDoyleLeadership.com. And my email is Anne, A-N-N-E, at Anne Doyle Leadership. And you'll find Power Up Women, my podcast, on Spotify or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Perfect, perfect. Once again, author and podcast host and keynote speaker at the upcoming event for the League of Women Voters of Oakland area. We have Anne Doyle. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Kevin.